Let's not kid ourselves here, you're all familiar with this one. It's a comedy of errors, a charming tale of young love transcending social barriers, and a sweet, memorable ending that spells hope for the future. If you've already guessed that I'm talking about Romeo and Juliet, then congratulations, you know me better than I know myself, and also you have a very pessimistic mind. So yeah, one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, Romeo and Juliet, is the story of two teenagers who fall in love, immediately have sex, and then die through stupidity. It's a more effective proponent of abstinence than Stephenie Meyer, it's inspired countless stupid teenagers to ignore their parents and do stupid rebellious things, and I'm of the personal opinion that it's one of Shakespeare's finest comedies. So without further ado, here's my apt little summary of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so here's the cast headcount. There's two main groups of characters here. There's the Capulets and the Montagues. They're both aristocratic families in Verona, which is somewhere in Italy, and they have this ridiculous grudge against each other for reasons that are never adequately explained. Each family has a lord and a lady, and on the Montague side we have Romeo, his pacifist cousin Benvolio, and their friend Mercutio, while the Capulet side has Juliet and her sword-swinging ass-butt of a cousin named Tybalt. In the middle of this whole mess is the Prince of Verona himself, who's essentially been a grudging referee for this whole stupid feud. Our story begins in the streets of Verona, where the servants of the two houses are having a little spat, with swords. Benvolio shows up to try and break up the fight, and Tybalt decides to join in the fun by attacking Benvolio. Great start so far, right? So then the rest of the city decides to join in the brawl too, and then the heads of both houses show up, and it's just a real mess until the prince shows up. So the prince is like, "Really guys? Again?" And they're like, "We're sorry." And he's like, "One more brawl like this and I'll have you executed." So the mob breaks up and everyone except the Montagues go home. So Lady Montague is like, "Oh, where's my son?" And Benvolio's like, "Yeah, he's in love again. He's off pining somewhere." Teenagers, right? So Romeo flounces on screen and has a talk with Benvolio about how much love sucks and why. Romeo's pining away for some girl named Rosalind, who has no interest in him because she's sworn a vow of chastity and besides he's kind of a creep. What a tragic young lad. Jump cut to Lord Capulet talking to this dude named Paris, who's some rich count or something. Paris wants to marry Juliet, and Capulet's all, "Dude, she's like 13, and Paris is like, "I know plenty of happily married women way younger than her." Ugh. So yeah, Paris is kind of a creep too, turns out. Over to Casa Capulet, where we finally meet Juliet. She's talking to her mom, who seems to share Paris's opinion that 13 is practically over the hill for a lady of class, and orders her to be married to Paris at once, or at least soon. She tells Juliet that Paris will be at their masked ball that night, and she'd better fall in love with him or there'll be some serious trouble. I gotta love this family dynamic here. Cut back to the Montague stooges, accompanied by fan-favorite character Mercutio. Now, Mercutio is a really fun character. 90% of his lines are innuendos, he snarks at anyone and everyone in his immediate vicinity, and a significant number of scholars think that his bromance with Romeo might not have as much of a B in it as one might think. Yeah, /fic shipping is 500 years old. Deal with it. Anyway, so Mercutio's trying to convince Romeo to get his party on, but Romeo's insisting on being a big old killjoy and moping about love all the time. So they crash the Capulet party, there's dancing and junk, and Romeo immediately falls in love with the next girl he sees. Unsurprisingly, the stunningly underage Juliet. Tybalt, unfortunately, recognizes Romeo's voice and, since he's a Montague, resolves to murder him then and there. But Lord Capulet orders him to leave the kid alone since Romeo's not hurting anyone and is generally considered to be a fine, upstanding young man who only makes a hobby out of creeping on underage girls. Romeo goes to talk to Juliet and they flirt for several creepy minutes. Then Juliet's nurse tells her that she has to go talk to her mom, and Romeo realizes that he's fallen in love with his family's hated enemy. And then Juliet realizes that she's fallen in love with her family's hated enemy. Oh no! So Romeo's hanging around the Capulet garden since he's fallen in tragic stalker love with Juliet. He hides from Benvolio and Mercutio, who are busily trying to summon him by shouting out attractive female features. Balcony scene! Romeo sees Juliet on her balcony gazing tragically out at the night. So Romeo waxes poetic about how pretty she is, and she waxes poetic about how tragic their love is, oh, if only Romeo were someone else, and blah blah blah. And eventually Romeo lets her know that he's there, and then they flirt for a while, and Juliet's like, and Romeo's like, "How's 9 o'clock sound?" And Juliet's like, "It's a date." Romeo goes to Friar Lawrence, this monk he's friends with, and he's like, "Dude, I just had the best night." And the friar's like, "What, with our girl Rosalind?" And Romeo's like, "Who's Rosalind?" So the friar berates him for forgetting his true love so quickly. And by the way, in case you were wondering, we never ever see Rosalind. She's so relevant, guys. Romeo tells the nurse to tell Juliet to meet him at Friar Lawrence's place to get married that afternoon. Well, that was kinda sudden. So the nurse goes and tells Juliet, and Romeo and Juliet meet up at Friar Lawrence's cell that afternoon and are married. Over to Mercutio and Benvolio again. They're just kinda hanging out, but then Tybalt shows up. This time, though, he's not looking for a fight. He's just looking for Romeo. However, as soon as Romeo shows up, it turns out Tybalt totally was looking for a fight after all. He's like, "Come at me, Romeo." And Romeo's like, "Dude, I don't even care right now. Everything is sunshine and rainbows." And Tybalt's like, "Draw your sword and fight me." And Mercutio's like, "Well, if Romeo's not gonna, then I'll be happy to." So then they have this slapstick sword fight and occasionally pitchfork for a little while. And then Romeo decides to ruin everything by jumping in the middle of the fight. And then Tybalt stabs Mercutio in the chest under Romeo's arm. Nice going, hero. So Romeo's like, Mercutio, bro, are you alright? And Mercutio's like, well, the stab wound doesn't seem to be as deep as a well, and preliminary scans indicate that it's definitely less than 10 feet wide, but somehow I think it'll do the trick. Screw you guys. And then he dies. Romeo gets enraged and immediately kills Tybalt in a duel, then flees the crime scene. Then the prince shows up, and he's like, where'd these dead guys come from? And Benvolio's like, Tybalt killed your bro Mercutio, so Romeo stabbed him in the chest, and Lady Capulet is like, have him executed at once, and the prince is like, nah, I think I'll just exile him. So then Juliet learns that Romeo's gonna be banished because he killed her cousin, and she's like, I'm so conflicted. No, I'm not, never mind. Romeo's at Friar Lawrence's place again, having a meltdown, when Juliet's nurse drops by and delivers a ring from Juliet, so he immediately cheers up. He and Juliet share some liaison. Ugh. And then he vanishes off to Mantua for a while, with the understanding that the friar will send him updates about his status back in Verona. Also, his mom dies from grief off screen, but no one really cares. Juliet's parents decide to cheer her up by marrying her off to Paris at once. Juliet is understandably upset, and her father threatens to throw her out onto the street if she refuses. I just love this family dynamic. So Juliet decides to do something desperate with the aid of the friar. She's gonna fake her own death with a potion that'll put her into a coma for about 2 days. The friar will send a message to Romeo, he'll return in secret and be there when she wakes up. Then they'll be free to run away together. A plan that's well thought out couldn't possibly fail. Oh, right. So Juliet drinks the potion and goes into a coma, and her family immediately panics and holds her funeral. But it turns out that poor Romeo never got the message the Friar Lawrence sent, since the messenger got delayed by a plague, yet another advantage that email has over the postal service. So when he receives news that Juliet is quote-unquote dead, he flips out and resolves to commit suicide. Romeo buys a poison and returns to Verona in order to die beside Juliet. However, when he gets to her tomb, he runs into Paris, who immediately attacks him because reasons. They fight, and Paris dies. Romeo sees Juliet's corpse, drinks his poison, and dies. The friar shows up just too late with his Juliet's totes not dead, dude message, and right on cue, Juliet wakes up, sees Romeo's corpse, a real one this time, tells the friar, yeah, I'll be right behind you, and then stabs herself in the chest with Romeo's dagger and dies. For real this time. Then the entire rest of the cast assembles around the star-crossed lovers and ponders the benefits of familial counseling. The end.
What is a youth? Impetuous fire. What is a maid? Ice and desire. The world wags on. A rose will bloom. It then will fade. So does a youth. So does